When it comes down to buying aftermarket race brake pads, there's a few options out there that people are most likely going to look at. You've got Hawk, you've got some stuff from actually the factory OEM stuff that you can replace, or you can go with from a brand called EBC. Now, I've had a bunch of experience on EBC brakes. I'm gonna jump into a little bit about these ones, which are called the RPX line from EBC brakes. And we're gonna talk a little bit about what you can expect if you plan on buying a set of these. I'm Alex Martini. Welcome to Martini Works Unboxed, where we're unboxing products that we're installing on our builds, as well as giving you some feedback on some things to expect when you actually go into buying stuff. Because quite honestly, buying things on like a stock image with absolutely zero description and a bunch of basic ass information is really lame, and it doesn't actually give you everything that you need to know. Our goal is to help you with that. Now, these pads are going on our 1999 Nissan Skyline R34 GTT, and we're specifically taking it out on Road America. For those that don't know, RA is a 4.048 mile racetrack with 3 very long straights, which means the brakes need to be tip-top shape, and they also need to be able to dissipate heat very, very well. Now, EBC offers rotors, they offer pads, and they have a bunch of information on their website to help you understand which series line you might need to get. The biggest thing to remember with any sort of brake pad line that you're buying, especially from EBC, is they have it broken down and kind of have this nomenclature of as you go up in the braking series or the brake pad series, they essentially go from street use all the way to fully prep track use. The difference between the two is essentially longevity, noise, and wear. Now, with the RPX brake pads, the only other thing to keep in mind with these ones specifically, these are more on the higher end track application use. These are not necessarily much of a street use brake pad. If you run these in the cold or you run these on a street car, they are incredibly noisy, which is fun at the beginning, and then it's absolutely terrible once you actually get used to it. You're not gonna notice anything too crazy on this. It's gonna say for track use only. It's actually a very pretty looking brake pad. It's made in the UK. We had these also on our 2023 Nissan Z as well, and I absolutely love them. The biggest question, 9 times out of 10 when I talk about RPX brake pads, because we've talked about this before, is what's the difference between the RPX and the RP1? Because both of those are race pads from EBC, both of which have a pretty similar price comparison between the two. You're probably gonna be paying a couple $100 for a set of RPX brake pads in the front. For something like a GTT, these say that they're for a 300ZX, but they're the same brake calipers, and something like an RP1. But it's actually gonna be the friction coefficient of the brake pads. Now, the RPX has a 0.55, whereas the RP1 has a 0.45. And if you go out onto the website for even on martiniworks.com, you're gonna see us explain that essentially the RPX works really, really well for what we're gonna say are under-servoed brakes. Under-servo essentially means that when you're pressing that brake pad or when you're pressing that brake pedal down, you have to press it more to get the same amount of brake that you would if everything was at 0. If you have an over-servoed car, something like a GTR or a GTI, you're gonna notice that your brake pad, or I'm sorry, your brake pedal is very, very sensitive. That's an over-servoed application. The RP1 does really, really well with over-servoed brake applications. The GTIs are a great example of this. Whereas under-servoed car applications, things like the Porsche GT and the Nissan Z, generally have under-servoed brakes, meaning you have to give it a little bit more to get the brake pressure that you want. So when you're looking at an aftermarket brake pad, you want something with a little bit of a higher friction point on a car that might have under-servoed brakes. It kind of aligns the sensitivity of that brake pad, especially when you're out on the track. Now, a common myth and a common misconception about brake pads is that when you apply that full force outside of actually losing traction, is that you want that force to come on right away. It's great for a rookie, but as you really start to dive into having good brakes for track application, you want a brake pad that you can actually lean into and you can feel the difference in the actual force on the brake pad to the rotor through your foot. If you just have 100% braking or you have 0% braking, it makes it really hard for you to modulate your brake pedal, especially if you're doing something like trail braking. The RPXs do incredible on under-servoed vehicle applications, just like the RP1s do incredible on over-servoed applications. You're essentially balancing that brake out a little bit more so that you have more sensitivity in your leg when you're out on the track. What does that all mean for you? I can talk about the fact that these brake pads can handle up to like 1,560 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just absolutely asinine. I think it's 650 or 800 degrees Celsius. But essentially, that doesn't really matter. Unless your car's on fire, these brake pads are gonna work insanely well. Another big thing about these that I generally like is, although they're a little bit more expensive, they do last a long time. They're gonna be the one for you because they're gonna give you a little bit more sensitivity in the braking field, which you would want if you don't have ABS. If you do have ABS and you do want a little bit more of a sensitive brake pad, that RPX is gonna be bang on for you. Now, outside of that, EBC usually has a lot of their stuff in stock. It's usually with really shitty details on the internet, so unfortunately anywhere else, you're not gonna get a lot of this information. But if you're looking to pick up a set over at Martini Works, we'd be happy to help you. We can also talk you through their yellow stuff, blue stuff, and red stuff brake pads as well. All you have to do is let us know in the comment section below what you think or what you'd like us to talk about next. Outside of that, only other thing I can say about the RPX brake pads is, again, if you're looking for something that's gonna really increase the sensitivity of your brake control, RPXs are gonna be bang on. They do have an incredible bite when they're cold, which is something that I completely forgot to talk about in the entirety of this video until I realized that I almost ran my huge forehead through the windshield when I too was driving my Z on these RPX brake pads and I tested out the brakes for the very first time. It's one of the really great things that make the RPX and the EBC brakes so absolutely incredible, because these things are made time and time again, and they've been made a ton of times in a bunch of different racing applications, and EBC has been in the racing motorsport era for decades. They just do a really great job. They're consistent, they're durable, they're reliable, they do really, really well. And because the RPXs don't require you to actually warm them up at all, they do make for really good autocross and hill climb brake pads as well, because you're not actually needing to lean into them to get them up to temp to operate. They have a fantastic cold bite. They are just loud as hell. If you have any questions on these, let us know below. And of course, thank you so much for watching. We hope this helps you a little bit on deciding what brake pads to get. And if you do need help finding brake pads, you can mod your car over at martiniworks.com.